Hey everybody, so here is a quick video on removing a crankset. In this case, we are going to be removing a SRAM XX1 DUB crankset, which has a Quarq power meter on it. We are going to just do a quick maintenance, clean it all up. We'll inspect our bearings on our bottom bracket in this service. The whole idea for this service is I have to dismantle the back end of this frame in order to change the bushings inside the linkages. So we are getting creaking in this bushing and well, one of these bushings. And in order to do that, I'm gonna have to take out the crank. And ultimately I figured why not just make a quick video as far as taking out a crank, inspecting bearings, servicing crank, cleaning it up, reinstalling it, torquing it down, so on and so forth. All right, so let's get started. All you need is an 8mm Allen. In this case, I have a pedal wrench, which will work perfectly. Now, we have to unscrew this bolt, and this thing is tied down with a significant amount of torque, 50, 55 Newton meters, somewhere in there. So it's pretty challenging to unscrew it, basically, right? A little bit surprising at first. So your best bet is you're gonna wanna use the chainstay as leverage to hold onto the crank arm, right? And then try and get your Allen key, not perpendicular to it, but at least one below that, right? Best you can right there. So, and then put pressure and move it out. And there's gonna be two hard spots. The first one to pop it out is gonna be hard, then it's gonna get loose, and then it's gonna get hard again, just like it is right now. And then it'll get loose, and you will be able to unscrew the whole thing out. All right. So, and there is our crank arm, or drive side crank arm. Throw this guy down. And then on this side, oops, we have our non-drive side with the spindle. Okay. Why is he jammed? There we go. So what fell is the actual dust shield, which just fell on carpet, and now it's all even dust here. Ultimately, this shields the bearings from dust, right? Now, I also have, in this case, because of this particular frame, it's an Ibis Ripley V4, I have a spacer, so you got to watch out for the spacer. Sometimes it will stick on this side, sometimes it'll stick on this side. So yeah, this part is done. We will put this on the table and we will go through cleaning it. Next, we will inspect the bearings and try and figure out if they're in good shape or not. As for the bearings, so basically we want to clean them, right? So I already did that so you guys could see them better. So what you want to do is roll it. Try and see if the bearing feels gritty when you roll it, all right? If it has lateral play sideways, if it feels gritty, if it makes noises, grindy noises, squeaky noises, if it doesn't roll smoothly all around with even pressure, that means one, the bearing could be shot inside, the race could be shot inside. It just might need to be re-greased. In fact, on this one here on this side, this one absolutely has issues. It's not shot. It definitely needs to be re-greased though. It definitely needs to be taken out, remove all the grease that's in there and pack it with new grease in order for it to be as smooth as this one. This one over here is in perfect condition. This one over here is definitely getting to its end of days. It might make one more season. Depending on how many miles gets put on this thing, and this bike gets a lot of miles put every year on it. So I will be taking this guy out so we can change out the bearing on him. All right. And we will do that next. In order to take out a bottom bracket so we can remove the bearing, we are going to need a tool. In this case, I'm using well, you're going to have to use a 12-tooth bottom bracket tool. Well, at least in this case, it's going to be a 12-tooth bottom bracket tool or other bottom brackets with different points of engagement, right? But for this particular bottom bracket, which is, I believe, a Cane Creek Hellbender, It is, and it's a dub system. It's a 12-tooth bottom bracket. So there's going to be, this guy's tied down. Typically, bottom brackets are around 40 Newton meters, so there's going to be some good pressure here. Now, watch out. Your best thing you could do, actually, before I forget, is this tool, because of all the pressure you have to put on it, it's going to want to slip out, right? And when it slips out, it starts stripping the edges. So what you want to do is take your hand, cup it underneath, right? And hold on to the tool as you're doing it. This way, it puts even pressure to try and keep it out there as you're unscrewing it, okay? So basically, from this point on, if it had any C's from before, once you get it unsnug, it'll open up real easy, or unthread real easy. Any C's is your friend when it comes to bottom brackets. This we could do by hand. Ta-da! And we have our bottom bracket. Now we're going to put it on the workbench and take out the bearing and clean it out and re-grease it. We took out the crank. Now let's clean up the components, right? So first, I'm going to start off with, what the, come on. Spacers and seals. So there's a ledge in here. Make sure you grab onto that little lip or ledge, whatever you want to call it. Put your fingernail in there, clean it good. Again, this one came out of the non-drive side. And we have this one over here, which is significantly more dirty. And the other one. Okay. Drive side. And then we have the actual spacer. And we'll clean it, grease and sand off this guy here. And ooh, surprising amount. So again, this one has lip. Just clean it all well in there. And this guy's done as well. All right, next, let's do the crank axle. So we want to take out this tension ring. So we need a 2mm, I forgot to mention it. And we are going to unscrew it, remove it. And let's clean this guy down real well. Wow, that was dirtier than, what is that? Or you could take a plastic brush. And get in there and just scrape it all out. Now let's take a clean cloth. Since we used up our dirty one. And try and get the threads on the inside. Again, we're just cleaning the threads, just so when we screw it back together, it doesn't grind against itself. Okay, now we got this bad boy. Let's cut the thick stuff first. Okay, now in here there's threads. I don't feel like taking all this out to clean it. So what we're going to do is we're going to bunch up some cloth, put it in between, Drag it all the way around, make sure to try and get it to the base. What I'm going to use, since I have it right here, is a little 2mm. Just to get, yep, got him. Now, we'll open this up, change out the battery. Let's clean around it real well. You don't want any dirt going on inside. We got our battery over here for the Quarks. It is a 2032 or 3320. I keep on mixing those up. 2032, I believe. That's what they call them. I have to go get one actually, so 2 seconds. This is looking pretty clean. Yep, works for me. Cool. Let me go get a battery so I can replace that. Should have had that handy. I will be back. And I am back. Got me a battery. So we open this guy up. Unscrew him, lefty-loosey. Oop, battery fell out. That's okay. Take out the Energizer. Let's put in a brand new fresh Duracell. Let's go aside. All right, well, check the pins, make sure they're sticking up, make sure they're not flattened down. If they're flattened down, you got to pick them up. This one's good. So, this guy, pop him down in here. Make sure the inside's clean. Looks clean just in case. Actually, before I do that, yep, he's good. All right. Green light, that's good. And by hand, all the way. Do not use a plier, do not use a channel wrench, just use your fingers. And kind of close them all the way. Last but not least, let's clean our tension ring. Basically here, we want to clean the threads. Do not use anything abrasive. You do not want to, this plastic, so you do not want to hurt those threads. If you're going to use anything to clean them, plastic brush. Harbor Freight sells a plastic, a metal, and a brass set of brushes for like a couple of bucks. It's actually a pretty decent deal. No affiliation. Okay. Let's see if the threads are clean before we put them on permanently. Let's go this way. Wait a second, I'm looking at this backwards. It is this way. He sounds clean. Yes, he is. Yep. No grit. One last thing, don't lock them down all the way. Essentially, this guy's going to allow us to create tension for any slack we have in our axle between our crank arms within the bottom bracket. So we removed the bottom bracket. Now let's just clean around it. Take out the old tape and grease or anti-seize that was on there. All right. Okay, so now we are going to remove the bearing from inside the shell. And for that, we will need a tool, a bearing removal tool, right? And the way this works, right? Got some stuff on the inside. All right, so basically with our tool, we're going to put the remover itself on the inside of the shell. Put the screw through. Put the shell on the outside to cover. Cover this hole. Will I be able to do it by hand, or am I going to need... Well, I'm going to need an 8mm. Let me get an 8mm quick. Actually, I don't remember if it's 16. It should be an 8. Yes, it is an 8. And ta-da! Our bearing is removed. There it is. Let's put this aside. We're going to need it to put it all together, right? So if we inspect it, it looks clean enough. Not as smooth as I'd like it. The other one's perfectly smooth. This one's a little bit rough. So what I'm thinking about doing is just replacing the grease. We'll replace the grease, pack it in the grease. We need to remove the top seal. We're going to take the blunt side of a straight edge of oh my god, I forgot the name of this stupid thing. Utility knife, for lack of a better term, right? The blunt side, and basically just pop the seal. Great. Put it underneath, just like that, and pop the seal. Make sure you don't bend the seal. All right, that's one side. And do the same thing to the other side. Underneath and backwards. Remember, not the sharp side, the dull side. Oops, go in the middle of the screen. There we go. All right. See how much dirt's... Ooh. It's a little dirty. These are Cane Creek Hellbender, I believe, bearings. I'm a big fan of Cane Creek for headsets, but on bottom brackets, I'm a huge fan of NTN bearings. They've been bulletproof. Although on one of my bikes, I am running an XD15 from Enduro, and that's been proven to be pretty good. Let's clean this guy thoroughly. What we're going to do, take a cup, fill it up with alcohol, so we cover the bearing. More alcohol. And basically try and spin the bearing in there and loosen any kind of grease that might be inside. Well, he's definitely getting loose. Yeah. He sounds pretty clean, actually. I don't feel or hear any grit whatsoever. Not much life left to him, is my guess. Maybe one more season. Now, we can't just pack them with grease right now. What we're going to have to do is blow them out with air and then let them sit so all the alcohol dries out, and then we will pack them out with grease. And we are back. We completely cleaned out the bearing. It is 100% empty inside, and it spins real well. No side-to-side play. If you put pressure on it, there's no grinding. So this is still a good bearing. It just needed to be repacked. All right, now I also went ahead and cleaned the seals. Basically, just grab some cloth and be careful going around it. Make sure you do not bend this. Keep it as straight as possible, which should be pretty easy as long as you don't put pressure where pressure doesn't need to go, right? And just clean the inside and the outside, basically, right? So we'll put these on the side. As far as packing it, grab some, you need waterproof grease, basically. Any waterproof grease will do for this, any kind of bearing grease. We don't want to put too much grease in there, right? So, put it on one side, just like that. Rub it on the edge and then press it down inside. Rub it on the edge and press it down inside, right? Press it down, rub it on the edge, and press it in, basically. Just like that, until we get all the way around. And that should be more than enough. All right, it'll definitely make its way to both sides. Now, obviously, it's not going to spin anywhere like it did before because now we have grease in there. But the whole idea is not the spin. It is the lube to keep it all slippery in there for when you're pedaling, right? That feels super good right there. Real good. So now, we'll put our seals on. Okay. Solid green part, or solid red, or solid orange. Solid part, flat part goes outside. The concave part goes on the inside. And that's pretty much for all bearings, or at least sealed bearings. All right, and you just want to press it in with your fingers. Do not poke it in. Press it in with your thumb, basically, all the way around. You'll feel it snap in. All right, again, solid part on the outside, flat, solid part on the outside. There you go, you could even hear it in that case go in. And this guy feels great. Okay. Now, we got our bearing shell, or bracket shell, bottom bracket shell. Let's clean him real well inside. Okay, we'll get everything from in there, from the inside over here. And now, let's install the bearing. Now, this is not an angular bearing. Angular bearings, this is a regular bearing. In other words, the wheel is on the middle and the pressure goes on the middle. Angular bearings, the race is actually carved out on one side. And they're actually better for cranks because when you put pressure sideways, that's when the bearing truly engages, right? Whereas these, as you put pressure on your crank to lock it down so there's no slop in it, it actually puts strain on the bearings and the race on one side, right? So technically angular bearings are better for bottom brackets. At least that's my belief. So, so now we're ready to put this guy inside, right? So we grab our tool again, put our cup inside, put our bearing on top. Use this guy here, if memory serves me correct. Yep. And then we screw this guy all the way down. Oh, I did it backwards. I knew I did something wrong. Come on. There we go. That gives me a head start. That makes more sense. Okay, now I got to make sure that he is sitting right there. He is not sitting right. So you want to make sure that he is sitting perfectly even with the face of the tool that is going to be inserting him. And that looks right. Nope. He slipped out once again. Come on. Okay. There we go. Now we're going to take him, we're going to press him in until he hits bottom, which is right there. You don't want to overdo it. Done. I love this tool. Come on. Ta-da! How's he feel? He's feeling much better, much better. And he's only going to feel smoother as the grease spreads out more evenly as it gets written. So he's doing real well. So now we are ready to put this bottom bracket back on the bike. I will be back. So now we're ready to put our bottom bracket back in, okay? Before we do that, we want to make sure that the bottom bracket housing, the shell, is completely cleaned. I mean, we don't want anything in there, and I forgot to bring my rag. Great. Okay. Now I've already sort of cleaned it out, but ultimately, let's do it one more time. And you want to make sure that there's no debris on the teeth. You do not want to get debris stuck between these teeth and these teeth because you will get creaks, right? So inspect it real well. If you need to, take a little brush, go inside, brush it all around, and then just take alcohol and clean it out. Like I said, this has already been cleaned. So as well as the bottom bracket has already been cleaned, right? So before we put it on, again, we want anti-seize. In this case, I'm using Park Tools Anti-Seize 1, Anti-Seize Compound 1. At least I think the C stands for compound. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to put just a little bit. Don't need much, right? Let me cover this. Then we're going to take our finger. We're just going to wipe it around one shot. It spreads real nicely. Okay, done. So we have a clean coat. And then by fingers, by hand, we're going to turn it on, right? We're going to turn it back on, right? So this is non-drive side, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Drive side the other way around. Okay, so in fact, do I get, and I see compound all over the place. So always by hand first, go as far as you can inside by hand before you bring out the tool again. And try and torque it down just in case you did not thread it right when you first put it in. This way you are 100% sure by hand that you did it right. Because you do not want to strip a bottom bracket. Okay. And that's pretty much all I could do by hand. Right about, I guess I could do more. There we go. So now we grab our tool. All right. First we tie them down with the ratchet. Okay, and then we're going to need a torque wrench. And this guy gets torqued pretty heavily, 40 Newton meters. Okay, set him up for 40. Actually, this guy's already set up for 40. So, again, we want to hold them well inside because a lot of pressure on this tool will want to pop it off the bottom bracket and it'll strip the teeth on the bottom bracket, right? So use the frame as a leverage as you torque them down bit by bit. There we go. Done. 40.2. Perfect. Our bottom bracket is on. And now we're going to put the crank back on to the bike. We're going to start off with the non-drive side with the spindle, right? Now, again, our tension ring, we want to make sure it's turned all the way to the end. Flat side of the tension ring goes to the outside of the bike, basically. It's facing the crank arm. The groove side goes to the inside, right? But we want to make sure the most important thing is that it's screwed in all the way, okay? So then, next what we're going to do is we are going to take our dust seal. Take the flat side of the dust seal and put it towards the outside, okay? Then we're going to take grease and we're going to put it on our spindle. All right? Main areas are where the bearings fall. Okay? Now, when we put the spindle inside, grease is going to sort of pack up. Well, it's going to pack up towards the dust seal, which is actually a good thing in my opinion, because it gets a little bit of grease in between the dust seal and the bearing wall, which protects the bearing from moisture coming in. But we don't want too much grease, because then grease will get attracted heavily, and eventually that will make its way into the bearing seal. Right, it'll wear out the bearing seal really. So a little bit of grease against the bearing wall is good. Between the shield and the bearing wall is good. Right, so we're going to take this guy. We're going to put him in. All right, he is in. Then we're going to take our other dust seal. Put a little bit dust seal. My mouth is dry. Put a little bit of grease on it. Take that and put it against the bearing. Okay. In my case now, I have a spacer. I need the actual spacer to fill in the additional space. And then we're going to put in the upper crank, the drive side crank arm. Okay. I'm going to hold it. Sometimes this could be tricky. Sometimes it goes right in. And in this case, it goes right in. Not that it's ever tricky, but sometimes it just doesn't want to line up right away. All right. Now this guy, bring him out a little bit, is going to need to be cranked down real well. 50 Newton meters. I think they say 54 for SRAM, but 50 Newton meters will do it. You can do a 54 if you want. All right, I have to go get my torque wrench and my 8mm socket. I will be back in a second. And I am back. So again, this guy's going to require a significant amount of torque, right? So we want to again use the frame, in this case the chainstay, as leverage. Okay, so then you always want to make sure it's straight. This is an angled torque wrench, so I could go on an angle for different purposes, but always when I'm doing regular torque, I want to be straight. Okay. There we go. 50 even. Sweet. And that is it. So now it's a question of eliminating play. If you notice, we have a little bit of play. I could go back and forth, okay? So in order to take care of that problem, that's where the tension ring on the other side comes into play. So let me turn the frame around and we'll take it from there. I turn the frame around, and as I previously mentioned, I can move the crank arm back and forth on this axis, okay? In order to solve that problem, we need to take this tension ring and start screwing it clockwise. By screwing it clockwise, we're essentially removing slack within the bottom bracket, okay? Or at least within the crank arm or the crank spindle. We don't start little by little, quarter turn at a time, right? Depending on the frame, like right there, I'm done. I don't feel any slack. Now it's a question of how much spin do I get? So this is a balance between getting it tight enough where it doesn't move side to side, and yet allowing yourself to have free spin of the crank. That's actually pretty good spin right there, but I could probably loosen it. Let me see how much I need to loosen it before I start feeling slack again. Okay, I feel no slack there. And if you notice, it rolls a little bit better, right? So let's loosen a little bit more. There I feel slack. So let's tighten it just a little bit. There, I don't feel slack. So that's good enough for me. So now we take our 2mm and we screw this screw here. Now, there's a space. Watch out as you screw it. It's going to want to tighten it more, right? So put your thumb against it. Now, ultimately, you do not want to tighten this guy down hard. In some cases, the space over here will close like it did over here, right? Other cases it won't. Doesn't always close, depends. So you just want to tighten, finger tight, and that's it. Just have a little bit of grip. That's all he needs. Do not crank him down. You will either crack the ring, strip the head on the screw, all right? And that is it, folks. So we took apart the crank, or removed the crank, cleaned the crank, changed the battery on the Quarqs, the power meter. We took out the bottom bracket shell, We took out the bearing from the bottom bracket shell. We cleaned out the bearing. We repacked the bearing with grease. We put it back into the bottom bracket shell, put it back on the bike. We installed the whole crank on the bike. We just set up the crank, and that is good to go for now. At this point, we could get on with the assembly, but in my case, I have to take all this stuff apart again in order to be able to take this guy out, this guy out, this guy out, this guy out, that guy out, that guy out, and change all the bushings in there. So that's going to be a bit of a pain in the butt job. First time I'm doing it on a V4. I've done this job on previous versions of Ripley's many times. So I'm interested to see how it's going to work out with bushings instead of bearings. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you like the video, press like. If you dislike the video, give it the finger. If you have any comments, please leave them below. And I will get to them as soon as I can. Subscribe for more videos. I got more videos coming up. I got to fix this. I got to take apart this shock, rebuild that. I got to take apart that Fox fork for the front of this guy, rebuild that. And then probably bleed the brakes on this bike, and this bike will be done and ready to go. All right. Hopefully it helps some people out, and we will see you guys in the next video. Take care. Thanks a lot. Bye.